Welcome to East Coast Averages, the podcast that brings you stories from everyday people from all around the world. Recorded on the east coast of Australia, I'm your host Nick, and each week we'll sit down with average people who have unique stories to tell. Let's peek over the back fence and see what's happening in other people's lives. I never know what I'm going to discover until I sit down and start chatting to them. Today's guest is coming to us from Montana in the USA. She grew up on a ranch in Montana, about 20 miles from the closest town, which only had a population of 300. I won't give you any spoiler alerts on Janet's episode, but she's connected to one of the most famous stories to come out of the States. And she also gives us a very personal insight into what it's like to teach in the American school system. So I hope you enjoy the show. So she's coming to us this morning, my time, afternoon her time, and she's coming in from Montana. How you going, Janet?
Absolutely fantastic. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Tell us your story, mate. Where you from? Where did you grow up, and what's going on in America?
Well, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, in eastern Montana, 20 miles from the nearest town. Couldn't see your neighbor, out on a ranch. And I live not too far from that ranch now, still in eastern Montana. I'm about an hour and a half away. I am a choir teacher, and I teach middle school choir and then upper elementary music. And yeah, do lots of cool stuff. So you're growing up in the middle of nowhere is Montana, is that like a, because I don't know much about geography, I'm pretty bad at it. Is that a landlocked state over in America? Yeah, the most landlocked. It's where I'm at is pretty close to the geographic center of North America.
Oh, okay, right.
About as landlocked as you can get.
So what was it like growing up in the middle of nowhere then, in the middle of America? Obviously on a farm. We call them farms, you call them ranches, I would imagine. You grew up on a farm, or? The
difference is, so here, there's a difference between a farm and a ranch. A farm, you are plowing, tilling, growing, and if you are on a ranch, you are raising animals.
Yep.
And a lot of people do both. So my dad gets really gets his knickers in a twist if you call it a farm, because his cattle are his main feature. So
yeah, so in Australia we just call it, everything's just a farm, whether you're farming beef, farming milk, or crops or whatever. Yeah, it's just all farming. So living in the middle of Montana, did you get homeschooled, or was there a local school for you, or?
There was a small county school, and but my folks worked really hard on it. My education is home too. I like to say that my folks were my first teachers, and then then my school kicked in later. So
paint us a picture of growing up. So a small town. What was the population of the town? Like you said, you couldn't see your neighbours, but obviously there was a town close by. Was it how many people were from that town?
About 300.
Yeah, that's not many people, is it? That's pretty small. So you all knew each other, obviously.
Yeah, we all knew each other, and if you did something in town, your parents knew before you got home.
Before you got home?
Called.
So they'll wait for you at the front door if you're in trouble.
Absolutely. That, and my mother was also a reserve sheriff's deputy and occasionally bounced at the bar, so I couldn't get away with anything. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, you wouldn't think you'd be able to get away with anything with 300. Was there anything in that town? Yeah, how in Australia every town's got its little hook. Like I used to live in a place called Gilgandra, which had 5,000 people, and I worked there for a while, and it was the windmill town. And if you go out to other towns, they have their little hook to try and get people to come and visit. Did this town have did anyone come and visit? Or was it just the 300 of you? Was it a town that people came to? Was there a rodeo or something that happened to that you looked forward to as a kid? You know what I mean? That you thought, it's the carnival's coming to town or something.
We had what we called the ski festival, and it didn't. I mean, the joke was because that we're in the flattest part of Montana. There's no hills. Well, there's some hills, but not a lot. And but the ski refers to the last three letters of Polish immigrants' last names, like Dabrowski, Kidarowski, Pulaski. And so it was a Polish festival with they had the polka mass at the Catholic Church. Yep. And then we had a parade, I think. And we always looked forward to the county fair because there was a rodeo and a demolition derby where you crash cars together for funsies. Yep. And
so I'm thinking that movie Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox, where he's walking the pig downtown. I don't know if you've seen that
Not
movie.
quite that bad.
Not quite that bad.
No, there was a movie made about my hometown though. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's about 25 years old now. And it was called Knockaround Guys. And it starred Vin Diesel, Barry Pepper, John Malkovich, Seth Green, all these big names. It was an indie film out of Canada. And it's absolutely terrible, but it is a fun watch if you're from Weibo.
I'll have a look at it for it after we finish this. So, brothers and sisters growing up on the farm?
Yeah. Yep. Older brother and a twin sister.
And a twin sister, get along. You like those twins that can psychopathic. I'm hoping you aren't psychopathic.
Sure.
Yeah, not that bad. But you're sort of like, are you close with your twin? Would you say you're like a standard twin? Yep.
Yeah, and my brother lives in a separate house on the ranch with my dad and my cousin. We have our own little compound out there even to this day.
How big's the ranch? Sorry to interrupt. How big's the ranch? Like,
well, when I was a kid, it was 11,000 acres, so it was pretty big.
Yep.
And as Dad got older, he let a lot of the leases go, and I'm not sure what the size is now. It's probably at least half of what it was. But he used to run about 240 head of cattle, calf cow pairs. Now he runs closer to 180.
Oh, okay. Yep. And your brother works on the ranch?
He actually works at a children's group home.
Oh, okay.
And but he goes down and helps when he can. Like we were all out there when it was branding day, and so everybody kind of pitches in when there's big jobs to be done.
So you still pull it out of the fire, or is it like electric brand nowadays?
We use propane.
Oh, yeah, to heat it up. Yep. They get upset, the cows, when you brand them.
Well,
yes and no.
But
yep.
They, I mean, it's not exactly. It doesn't exactly tickle, but their hides are so thick that it's kind of like getting a tattoo, a very quick tattoo. So
yeah, I remember I had to go with a mate to inject his horse with some antibiotics, and I don't like horses. And anyway, so we had this big needle full of like an antibiotic from the vet, and he said, "Yeah, just take it, just pat it on the rump and stick it in there and shove it in." And yeah, it was. We were both like going, "Well," and the horse didn't flinch, but I thought I was going to get hit by the horse. So you grew up riding horses as well out there?
Yeah. We grew up. We worked cows on horseback, and we did that until Dad blew his shoulders out and he couldn't get on the horse anymore. So
it's now motorbikes or 4-wheel quad bikes, is it? You do it with?
He uses 4-wheelers and dogs.
Yep. Yeah, cool. And it was a good growing up on a farm. Like, what was life like in, like, what year were you born, if you don't mind me asking?
I was born in the early 80s.
Yep.
And it was I think the 80s was a good time to be a kid. And
pre-internet, pre-phones.
Yeah, pre-phones, everything. To get television, because we were so far out, you could get one or two stations out of North Dakota on the antenna occasionally, but my mom and her father put in a satellite, but you had to manually aim the satellite. Like you had to set the degrees on a knob and pick up satellite feeds. So I watched a lot of Star Trek Next Generation and People's Court. And that's about all I remember watching when I was young.
Bloody hell. And so did most people, did you have to leave to, like you teach music, did you go and do education for that? And you would have had to have left Montana or your small town to go and learn that, like at uni or something? Most kids like headed out to get educated, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a small community college about an hour away, but of course teaching takes a 4-year or 5-year degree depending on what you're going for. And so I went to a college, a small liberal arts college about 4 hours away, still in Montana. And I spent most of my career though in Montana. I did have a short stint in South Dakota and Nebraska. And
does it actually snow in Montana?
Oh God, yes.
It does? Yeah, see, I'd love to live in a town where it snowed. I'd love to spend a winter somewhere where it's like 4 foot of snow everywhere, eh? Because we're just coming out of winter, and I'll probably put a jumper on maybe 4 or 5 times during winter.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so everyone says if it gets cold here, it goes below 5 degrees, everyone's jumping up and down like the world's going to end. It's cold, and I live in the Blue Mountains, which is one of the colder parts of Sydney, sort of thing. So yeah, I would actually love to go to a big city where it snows or somewhere where it snows just to experience what it's like living in snow. There's-
You'd probably really enjoy Missoula, Montana. It snows quite a bit up there, and it's up in the mountains. And I lived 55 miles north of Missoula, and there would be 3 to 4 feet of snow on the ground by the end of the winter.
Yeah, that's all right. It'd be
And
nice to go and do that.
yeah, and the worst part was the ice because it would start to thaw and then refreeze, and then you'd have these thick, thick, thick chunks of ice everywhere. Um, but like Eastern Montana out here, it gets much colder, but there's less snow and it warms up in between.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And
yeah.
so,
So it's really cold at night, but it sort of warms up during the day, sort of thing.
no, well, you'll have these weird cycles where you'll have these warm air masses run through. I remember a time in my eighth grade year where there was 100-degree difference between 3 days. It was 70 degrees because there was a warm air mass coming through, and right behind it was an Arctic air mass, and then it would move behind it. It was 35. It was 30 below 2 days later.
Yep.
And yeah, it was Fahrenheit, I guess. I don't know. I suppose you use Celsius.
Yeah, we use Celsius. So I actually looked that up because it's supposed to be 30 degrees today, which is about 86 Fahrenheit, I think. I was looking up on the phone just before.
That's about what we average right now. And the hard part about Montana, gets brutal hot in the summertime in Eastern Montana, but it gets brutal cold in the winter. And I remember a blizzard where we were snowed in for 2 weeks. The wind was howling and it was 35 below. And it was too cold to even snow. It was just picking the snow up off the ground and blowing it around. And we ran out of firewood. And so we had to go chop firewood out in the yard. And we had to follow Dad because we couldn't see where we were. So we had to follow my dad to make sure we didn't get lost in the blizzard. My mother was not the warmest of people, but even she felt so bad for us. She made us spice cider to warm up when we got back inside.
So how was that like growing up on the farm and doing stuff like that? Did you obviously there was no shops to go to, so you grew your own food, obviously slaughtered your own cattle for meat and whatnot?
It was funny because to a lot of people, especially with cattle or like meat prices now, beef was a luxury item. But for us, it was really fun to be able to finally have chicken because we mostly ate beef.
Yep.
But the family only ate cows that were not good for sale. So they were usually kind of tough and chewy. So Dad usually had them all ground up into hamburger. We ate a lot of hamburger.
So you ate a lot of hamburgers because you were eating the meat you couldn't sell at the market.
Right. It's exactly what it was. And then we started raising 100 chickens at a time and butchering those in July. And then we got a lot of chicken that way. We almost never ate seafood. It wasn't really allowed in the house because it made Dad ill. It just, the smell, it just made him sick.
Yep.
So I never learned to eat fish or anything. So it was pretty much chicken, pork, and beef.
Well, look, I live 120 kilometres from the coast, and we'll have trucks come up here with signs saying fresh seafood. And I think we're 120 k's from the coast. It can't be that fresh. So I'm imagining in the middle of Montana, if someone comes into town with seafood, it's probably not the freshest seafood going.
Especially not in the 80s.
No, I probably wouldn't be eating that. So
you could catch like bullhead catfish and northern pike they're kind of related to a barracuda. They look like a freshwater barracuda kind of.
Yep.
And you could catch pike, and pike are, I guess people who like fish say pike are pretty tasty, and so are walleye, but you can get those nearby, but unless you
I don't personally I don't like fish. I only eat fish if it's battered and deep fried.
Oh, good.
Don't like that.
It's not safe.
Yeah,
the only fish I like is halibut. I like Alaskan halibut.
Yep.
But that's about it.
Cool. So how if there's 300 people in town, obviously I think I heard on your podcast you're married with a couple of kids. How do you meet someone in a town? Do you meet them at college? Like 300 people in town.
No.
Did you meet them in kindergarten, like when in middle school or something?
I do have a lot of classmates that married each other and stayed in town. So yeah, that's a thing. I actually met my husband, who is from Sydney, but Sydney, Montana, not Sydney, Australia. And Sydney, how we would meet up is that we met each other during a school activity where all of the area schools in Eastern Montana came together to do speech and drama or choir. So I met my husband when he was checking out my twin sister at a choir festival.
Oh, okay, right. So you saw him first, did you?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were actually just good friends until, and then it wound up, we were going to the same school
Yep.
for college. So that's when we actually started dating. But I had known him since I was 14.
And how do your kids cope with living in the middle of nowhere? Like, is it
You
different?
know,
Like now they've got the like where obviously it's like the technology these days is ridiculous. Because I'm sitting in Blue Mountains, you're in the middle of America, and we're talking without any delay. And I know it's been around for a long time, but it's still pretty amazing that we can have this conversation without, you know what I mean? Like this just would not have happened when we were kids. How do they find that? Is it better or worse because they're living in a small town and they can see things happening? You know what I mean? Like, do they sort of like look at the internet and think, oh man, I wish we lived near that town so we could go to that sporting event or that concert or... Excuse me real quick whilst I drop an ad on you and then we'll be back to the show. Hey, East Coast Average listeners, if you're a cat lover searching for a t-shirt that combines creativity with style, check out graphicoasisco.com. There you'll find unique designs featuring whimsical cats, steampunk themes and inspirational quotes. Each shirt there is made with vibrant colours, sharp lines, and you'll look fantastic while showcasing your personality. So go and visit graphicoasisco.com and use East Coast Averages at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Elevate your wardrobe with graphicoasisco.com. Let your shirt do the talking.
Because where I live right now is only an hour and a half from that area. I'm actually in a bigger town
Yep.
here, and the town that I'm living in here is 9,000 people.
Yep.
And so it's not quite so isolated. My kids love it here because it's bigger than the town we had. We had been living in another teeny town on the west side, that place north of Missoula that I had mentioned.
Yep.
In the mountain. And that was about 1,200 people, but it was still a very small school because most of them were retirees. And they really like it here. My oldest is flourishing at the high school because there's so many activities that he enjoys, and he gets to do choir and band and speech and drama. And my youngest really likes it here too. So, but we're close to the farm, and we can still go out and enjoy that isolation,
Yep.
that getting away from it all kind of thing out
Yeah,
there.
not 9,000 people. Yeah, like I said, I lived in a couple of towns in Western New South Wales, which one of them had 5,000 and the other one had like 5,500. They were 100 k's apart. So yeah, there's actually 5,000 people, 9,000 people makes a fairly. The only thing I suppose you miss is the big sporting fixtures and concerts and all that kind of thing.
We're only 2 hours from the biggest town in Montana, so you can go to those things if you want to.
Well, that doesn't sound too bad then.
What's that?
That doesn't sound too bad actually. If you're only 2 hours away, like I said, I probably should.
Yeah.
I absolutely have no idea about geography. And one of the guys actually a guest on the show. He's always making fun of me because he'll say something. I'll say, "Isn't that next door to this country?" And you go, "No, Nick, it's not anywhere near that. You idiot." So yeah, I didn't pay any attention in geography at school. And
It's okay.
so the podcast you did, you're related. You've got some relations there to the JFK assassination, and from coming from Australia, it just seems that the whole world's obsessed with that time of America. You know, the JFK assassination, your politics. I think I know more about your politics than I do about my own politics, and we only ever see the news and all that kind of thing. So, how does someone like you know what I mean? Like it's the things like you like to talk about, the JFK assassination and FBI and that. And I thought it was pretty interesting that you were related to that. And was that something obviously your family spoke about a lot?
Yeah, and I was chatting with another podcaster last night about this, but one of the tough things about that podcast is that because I was related to him and because mom and dad talked about him a lot when I was growing up, I never really looked into the rest of the assassination because I was going off of what they said. So doing all this research I feel like it's been an uphill battle because I didn't know any other perspective other than what I grew up with.
So you're finding out that things that your parents didn't tell you or didn't tell you because they thought it wasn't important or because they wanted to keep that away from you as a kid, or?
They talked pretty openly about him. What I've managed to find is most of what they said has been true. Most of what my dad and my folks have said it has been true. There's only been a couple of things that I haven't exactly proved them false, but I couldn't confirm them.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that had that guy, my uncle Guy Bannister, that he did during World War II. has been really hard to confirm. Like especially the story about the Rosenbergs, about him trying to chase down the nuclear secrets before they left on a plane to Russia out of
Yep.
Montana. I've not been able to confirm a lot of that stuff. They view him fundamentally different than the rest of the world views him. And I don't know if in Australia there has been like a wide distribution of Oliver Stone's JFK movie.
Oh, I think is
But
that when was that? When did that one come out?
92, I think.
Yeah, I think that was quite big over here. Yeah, I think I've seen it. I don't think I went to the cinema as well, but I think I've seen it on DVD when back in the day when there was DVDs. So yeah, we get a lot of American political history, and a lot of people are really interested in it.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually, and like I said, we only sort of get the CNN and the Fox and documentaries. I learned all my political stuff from watching The West Wing, which is probably not even close. But yeah, like what's America actually like? Like we get all that, but what's it actually like to live in America around all the political? Because we see, Trump and Biden, and we get that all, and it's like on our news like every night of the week. And I'm assuming you don't see Australia on your news every night of the week.
It's gotten more difficult to manage the politics than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we're in a fairly conservative area. And my family's very conservative, as you can probably guess from who my uncle was. But like the neighbors were in the Democrat Party, and they would come over, and we'd have coffee. One would make a Democrat joke. We'd make we'd make a Democrat joke. They'd make a Republican joke, and then everybody just debated politics and had fun, and then went home. It wasn't a knockdown, drag out slugfest.
Yeah.
And now you can't even bring it up. You don't want to bring it up because it's very polarizing now, because the polar ends of the political spectrum, and I'm saying this from a neutral point of view. I only am very slightly conservative. I'm pretty centrist. Both extreme ends actively encourage the idea that the other side are fundamentally inhuman and terrible people.
Yeah, that's the thing. I like to listen to American talkback radio for some reason. I've listened to talkback radio in Australia all my life. I like to listen to your some of your really, really right wing commentators are hilarious to listen to, and they get so passionate.
Yeah, they're funny.
And sometimes I listen to them and I think, yeah, I'd vote for Trump if I was in America. And then I listen to someone else who's on the other side of politics, and I think, oh yeah, I'd probably vote. No, I wouldn't vote for Trump. I'd vote for him. And it's listening to those podcasts and that and interviews with them. I swap between the two like fairly regularly. I don't think I see anywhere in Australia that gets that passionate about like some of the I can't remember is it Mark Levin or something is a bloke I listen to.
Yeah.
And like they just get so passionate about what they're talking about. And then you got like is it Ben Shapiro, and then you see
I've listened to a lot of Ben Shapiro, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, oh yeah, he's making sense. And then you see the other side of your politics. And I watch all that thing and I think, I wonder what it's actually like to live. Is everyone that passionate, or is there plenty of people just walking around who really don't give a shit about the whole political scene?
Depends on where you're at. There's a lot of people who don't give a shit. I'm in an area that's pretty spicy. What makes it hard to be a public school teacher is because politicians on both sides have decided to make our American schools a battleground for political issues. We get stuck in the middle, maybe unintentionally, but maybe quite intentionally. You've got on the leftist side, you have the teachers' unions are very heavily left. And quite honestly, they advocate for policies I don't endorse. And so a lot of conservative teachers, there's more conservative teachers in Montana than most, but there's not many. Teachers overwhelmingly kind of lean liberal. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. I worked with liberals my whole life. It doesn't bother me.
It's a bit sad that they're using schools to get their to fight their agendas. You know what I mean? Like they should just
they're using kids as a
kids
big
out of it, man. Like come on, it's just it's ridiculous because you do. With you saying that, you do see a lot of stuff about you can't teach this in school, you can't teach that in school, and yeah, it seems like you guys are everything revolves around what you're teaching kids in school.
And it would be less frustrating if they were honest. So the left sees genuine problems with what the right's doing, and the right sees genuine problems with what the left is doing, but neither will admit it. And then they triple down, and then they can't figure out why teachers won't stay. Like they have this shocked Pikachu face when teachers leave en masse, and then can't figure that out. And it's like, well, so teachers become we become the scapegoat for all of society's problems because actually solving those society's problems would be much more difficult than just blaming a teacher.
Yeah, yeah. And you're supposed to fix the problems by teaching the kids to fix the problems as they grow up or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so really what's causing our schools to really, really founder and fail is a great destabilization of the family unit. Kids are coming to school without their needs met. Their family units are not able to meet their needs. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But if you have a politician who's like, okay, let's try and make sure that families do what they're supposed to be doing for the kids, or can we blame teachers? Which one's an easier sell to a population of voters?
Yeah, blame the teachers.
So you get the people on the right who are saying they're teaching CRT to my kids, and then you get the people on the left looking at the people like, especially like when there's a school shooting like there has been recently. There's one I believe. Yeah. Then you have people on the left saying that the right just wants all of our kids to die because they won't ban guns, and they're just being dishonest, and they won't meet in the middle or do anything that would be reasonable.
Yeah.
And it makes it very frustrating.
Yeah, and look, the gun thing is an interesting one because in Australia, we obviously back in the 90s, we had a massacre and the Prime Minister bought all the guns back, and nobody owns guns. I remember a couple of years ago, the leading article was, oh, America's teaching their children how to shoot. And it's like, if I lived in America and had guns, why wouldn't I send my 7-year-old somewhere to learn how to handle the gun, disarm, take the ammunition out and make it safe? You know what I mean? It's a no-brainer. Yeah. And we got that as like, oh, look at these fucking crazy Americans. They're teaching their kids how to handle guns. Well, if every house has got a gun, why wouldn't you teach your kids how to handle it?
And I started teaching when I was 4.
Yeah.
Dad would get the sandbags out and I would start plinking with my 22. And it turned out later I have some eye problems, so I actually do much better with shotgun. My grandmother was an Olympic level trap shooter. And she won the Shermcowan Marathon with 498 out of 500 targets at the age of 64. And then my father, so my paternal grandfather taught my father how to sharpshoot. So both of them were sharpshooters. They could get 5 shots under a dime at 100 yards. All of the siblings trap shoot. I do better with pistol and shotgun, and then everybody else does better with rifle. So though I will say I managed to get my deer by myself. Well, anyway,
is Montana an open carry state? Can you just carry?
Yeah, you can open carry.
Yep. Yeah, so
nobody does.
As an Australian, I think, as an Australian, people go, "Oh, fuck, they're carrying a gun," but police walk around with guns on their hips all the time, and nobody bats an eye, So,
right,
and that's
and if you look at like the homicide rates and the assault rates, it's a little bit misleading. There are a few counties in my state that have very high homicide rates compared to the rest. Like overall, not a ton, but because of our very low population. Often the weapon of choice is a knife.
Yeah.
And instead of a firearm. And you often see some of the areas with the most gun ownership has the lowest assault rate because you're awfully polite to other people.
And look, I think even if someone did come into your country and said we're getting rid of all the guns, it would be an impossible.
It would be impossible.
It would be an impossible thing to do. So you're better off educating people on how to use the guns properly. The only thing I don't understand about America is your health system, because Australia has a socialist health system which we pay tax for, and I don't mind doing that. I earn pretty good money in the job I do, which I'm not allowed to mention because we have some pretty strict social media policies, and so anything I say, if I mention my job, they take as coming from that. But now I lost track of what I was saying. That's why this is the East Coast Averages, Janet. What was I talking about again?
Yeah, the socialized medicine.
That's the only thing I don't understand about the States is that I don't mind paying my taxes for people to go to the doctor. Like it's we pay tax for medical stuff, so we don't have to buy insurance for it. So that's the only thing that comes out of America that I really don't understand. and it seems to be a bit of a backward system. People go broke. They get sick. They go broke.
My take on medicine is very similar, and this is with me not being in the medical profession myself, but I have several family members who are. It's the medical system got the way it is, the same way the schools got the way they are. Is they turn it into a political battleground and then nothing changes, or the stopgap measures pile up over the years and actually hurt more than they harm. I am personally not against a socialized medicine um, model, but it would need to account for a lot of different things. There are things unique to America that you would have to account for. So, like, for instance, my very, very isolated hometown that's 4 hours from the nearest large city. How do you get doctors out there? I
Yeah,
mean,
look,
it's hard to get them
we
out.
have the same problem in our
Yeah,
small country towns as well. You can't get GPs out there. I think they have incentives to go out there, but to some extent, even I'm not sure what it's like for you guys to book a doctor, but even living in the city, sometimes it's difficult to find a doctor that's free. So I think that's a worldwide
exactly.
problem. I think.
Well, and one of the arguments from the Daily Wire, which is where Ben Shapiro um, does his podcast. I think he's a owner of it, and he started it. But he's right about when people say they want healthcare, they want quality healthcare. So if you create this system that turns into a giant, what's it called? The machines that do 1,000 steps just to do one thing. What's it called? There's a name for that kind of machine. But if it takes you 6 months to get into somebody for whatever reason, whether it's because the wait time is that long or
Yeah.
you get
Yep.
bounced around to 5 different doctors, that's not quality healthcare. Um, I am open to any system that removes the barriers
Yeah. Yep.
and keeps the cost down and cuts out the people who are siphoning money out that isn't going to healthcare providers. We also need to be doing things to make it more attractive for a kid to become a doctor. So, like, for instance, I looked at my grandfather was a physician, and he got his training in Tulane, down in New Orleans in Louisiana. My son wants to go into the medical field, so I looked to see what the tuition for him to attend my grandfather's school. And it's to finish the medical degree, and this is not including housing, meals, whatever. To finish the medical degree, it's $444,000 after you've already gotten a bachelor's and spent all the money on that bachelor's.
You sort of have to charge the prices you charge to pay that back. Otherwise, it's never getting paid back.
Exactly.
Yep.
It creates this loop. It creates this loop of debt that the holes always have to be filled. And it wasn't like that when my grandfather was becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
So it it's a mess. It's a mess. And there are laws that rightfully were put in place that protect patients, and those need to stay there. And you don't want to throw the entire baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are a lot of laws that actively hold back any sort of meaningful change.
Yeah, like I said, from looking from the outside in, it looks like a bit of a mess over there. And
It's a holy living mess. You're not wrong.
yeah, yep.
So
So I really like the idea. I would love to come to America and visit. I'm going to Hawaii, and talking about guns, I'm going to Hawaii in October, and the first thing I Googled was one of those ranges you can go and shoot any type of gun you want. And I couldn't find one in Hawaii. I don't think there's one in Hawaii, so it's a little bit disappointing.
probably not. Yeah.
Because I was hoping that I could go into one of those ranges and like shoot an AR-15 and an M60 and throw a grenade or something or whatever else you got in there. But yeah, I don't think there's any in Hawaii, so it's a little bit disappointing. But anyway, so I'll have to get over to the
our
main.
shooting range in our yard.
Yeah, yep.
Like at the ranch, you just go outside and you walk 50 feet that way, and there's the shooting range.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, look, I'm not against. Like I said, I'm not against guns. They are like I don't have any reason to own one here. But so how do you, as a teacher, if you don't want to talk about school shootings, that's fine. But are you nervous as a teacher at school? Like when you see,
Yeah.
Are you hyper vigilant in the classroom when you're teaching, or do you just sort of forget about it sometimes? Or
sorry, you cut out there, Nick. I'm sorry.
oh, sorry, do you sometimes like forget about the school shootings, or are you always sort of hyper vigilant and switched on when you're teaching?
I never forget it. I'm very vigilant. I'm not so much worried about something like Columbine or Sandy Hook happening. What I'm more worried about is mentally ill or aggressive people making it through security. Actually, it's far more likely that I've had lockdowns at several schools with intruders, and it wasn't somebody coming in with guns. It was angry parents or angry family members or angry siblings or a student who's having a mental health break of some kind and is out of control in the building. That's far more likely to happen. That's happened to me several times.
Yep.
Um, I always teach with my door locked, and it annoys the kids because if they have to go to the bathroom, they have to, be let back in. But I always teach with my door locked. They're especially with the recent school shooting.
Yeah, I was more looking to get how you felt actually in the classroom, like regardless of how you feel about the guns and the medical treatment available to the people with mental health. Is like, how does it actually affect you on a personal level when you're in the classroom? And I think so. It's something you do think about.
Oh, absolutely. And I check the door every time I change buildings. I work in 3 buildings, and I check the door every time. And it is constantly present in my mind. We run the drills. I have worked really hard to make the drills not scary for the kids. One of the things that I have that I'm pretty strict about because of stuff like this, I don't like movement in the classroom where they're moving from out of place from where they're supposed to be. I've been in a place where a student, that was the first sign that he was about to start throwing things and being unsafe. So I do have rules and structure in my classroom that keeps me from hitting a trauma trigger. But also I have other supports for them to be able to meet their own needs and not. A lot of kids have to wiggle and move, and that's okay.
Yeah,
I just have. I say you can do whatever you want as long as it's silent and it's in your spot.
Yep.
But moving around the room is a trauma trigger for me.
When I look at the TV from, like, I want to come and visit America, but the stuff that they shove down our throats on the news, on TV and everything from the States, I sometimes think, fuck, is it not safe to go there? Like, will I accidentally walk into a shop and get bloody shot by gangbangers or something? You know what I mean? Like, it's that bad over here on our media, and it's always bad news. It's always, like, will I accidentally, if I'm driving down through a town, will I turn left and be in the middle of, I don't know, some bloody MS-13 gang and get bloody? Is it that bad in America? Like,
No,
it's not.
no. I feel safe in my city going just about anywhere, and my hometown, I feel safe going anywhere. There are parts of the really big cities that you can go, but you need to have like some situational awareness and be, smart.
So
I've only been
I'm unlikely to drive me and my family into like a really shitty situation. Yeah, that's not likely
I've
to
only
happen.
had that happen once my entire life, where I took a wrong turn and I wound up somewhere where I was like, I need to get out of here right now. That it was in Bakersfield, California. I was trying to get through up to Kernville, California, and I took a wrong turn and I wound up in a place where you start looking around and you see all of the windows have iron bars and all of the doors are covered with metal grating and everything's covered in gang tags. That's the only time my entire life I wound up somewhere where I just wanted to get out fast. But everything else I've been pretty safe.
Yeah. And look, my sister and my mum and a couple of other older ladies went with my sister. They did Route 66 and they didn't have any problems. Had a great time.
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah.
Route 66 is fantastic. I love going down on Route 66. It's really cool.
And so let's go back to your podcast. So I had to listen to it. I thought it was pretty sad, that the young fella died touching the electric pole, the electric light.
Oh God, that one was so hard to write. Oh,
yeah, and if you listen to the first episode of my podcast, the lady McCarthy I'm talking to, her father died from electrocution, and again I heard that the young fella died electrocuted, and I think, man, if we just had those safety switches we had now, none of that would have happened. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a thing that you don't even think about now. But I guess back in the day, electricity was sort of a dangerous sort of thing to be around.
Well, and that's actually something I touch on I believe it's episode 7, because unfortunately every safety protocol we have today was built on the bodies of people who passed away. Rural electrification, when it first came out, there was just things that they just didn't know, and that was all the cause of that electrocution was just a swaying cable, swaying in the wind and wearing away until it
Yeah.
electrified the chain, and they just didn't know.
Yeah, it's sad, eh? It's a much better time to be alive, I think, because
Oh yeah.
we've got we're a bit safer about things like that, and things are a bit more curable than they were
Mhm.
100 years ago. So, on the farm you grew up on, did you?
Mhm.
So you were expected to do a bit of work. Did your mum and dad
God, yeah.
expect you? Like, was it
Sun up till sundown.
what was that?
Sun up till sundown, yeah.
And what
We
sort of
love.
things did you do? You just did everything.
So the kids' chores. So on days we were moving cattle, we had to be up in the barn at 5 a.m. to go hop on the horses so that we could get out and get to the pasture they were at to move them when the sun came up. And that was mostly for branding, but occasionally for when we had to just change pastures. And actually, my dad's grazing system became popular in Australia. We had an Australian, and I can't remember his name. His name was Mac. We all called him Mac, and we thought he talked so funny because we were 7 years old. He actually came up to do some research with Dad at some point when I was a kid. Also, our bull was one of the first bulls allowed into Australia in the 1970s.
Did they send the
And
bull or just the semen for insemination?
no, we sent the whole bull,
Yep.
and he had to be in isolation for 6 months. And I think his name was Sojourner, I think. But he was a champion Hereford bull, and so we sent him. He was one of two bulls allowed into Australia after decades of isolation. The dad has a picture of him on his desktop. He loves that bull. But the kids' chores typically were feeding chickens, watering chickens, anything that a kid could lift.
Yep.
And of course, holding the flashlight while dad worked on machinery, that was an important job. And we would feed the bucket calves, any calf that couldn't be supported by the cow, we had to feed
Yep.
morning and night. When we got older, we were feeding the steers and the yearlings. We had to pour out buckets of grain and pitch hay.
So
Anytime
you were
that
like driving the pickup at like 6 years old, sort of thing.
Oh yeah, no,
Yep.
I started at 4. Dad
Yep.
would put it in low gear, and then he'd say, "Aim it at the water fountain," and then he'd
Yep.
climb in back and shovel grain while I was here looking through
Yeah. Yep.
the steering wheel because I was so short.
Yep.
And then we were driving by ourselves by about 11 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
And
And look, I think city kids look at that and think that'd be heaps of fun. Did you ever look at the city and think, oh, I'd rather live in the city?
no, well, okay, so like if you were bored, that looked pretty attractive for a little while because you're operating machinery. We were doing tractors in summer fallow by the time we were 12, 13 years old, solo. Um, my siblings were better with machinery than me. I had this magic touch that made everything break down. So I kind of got stopped getting asked after a while. But I almost set the combine on fire.
So your podcast, is that going to, when you're talking about that sort of like really known history, will that upset anyone? Like listening to it?
Probably,
Probably.
probably. I've already upset somebody, and I got a very angry email already.
It's telling you that
Um,
you're making it up and stop saying that sort of thing. Like, was it?
no, so there, and I had that discussion with another guy last night, and so people in the Kennedy assassination become caricatures to folks who are researching the assassination. And what I mean by that is if they are hard on one side, whether it was full-blown conspiracy or lone shooter, if you believe anything different than them, they get offended, they get upset. Their whole part of their identity is built on what they believe about that assassination, and they get wound. Um, so like a really good example is there is a lot of people who are fans of the Garrison Commission, and that was, for those folks who don't know, there were several commissions convened to discuss not only the Kennedy assassination, but also the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. The first commission, the Warren Commission, was viewed as intensely deficient. And I actually agree with that. They were rather incomplete. There were things that they didn't investigate. They also had people on the commission who were inappropriate to be on the commission. A really good example is Alan Dulles was the former head of the CIA. And it was under his leadership that the Bay of Pigs fiasco happened, where an American-backed invasion of Cuba failed. And it was a huge, embarrassing fiasco under Kennedy's administration. And that was under Allen Dulles' leadership. So he was fired as the CIA director. But even though he was fired, he's on this Warren Commission, which it was a terrible choice. And many members of the commission thought it was a terrible choice and fought it, but it happened anyway. Then there's the Garrison Commission. And there are a lot of people who are big fans of the Garrison Commission. And the Garrison Commission was convened not really convened, it really was centered around the trial of a guy named Clay Shaw down in New Orleans. And of course, my Uncle Guy was from New Orleans. He knew Jim Garrison, the guy who led it, and they were not fans of each other. And my father alleges that he had dirt on Jim Garrison. That guy had dirt on Jim Garrison. That's why they hated each other. And my uncle wound up in New Orleans after he left the FBI, and he was hired to do anti-corruption work in New Orleans. He outed 91 officers for corruption in New Orleans. So he was persona non grata. He actually, when he was fired for allegedly threatening a waiter with a gun. There is some question as to if the official narrative of what happened in that incident was true. I can see it three different ways. It could have happened exactly as it was described, or it could have been, yes, my uncle did that, but other officers were doing much worse and not being held accountable, but they held Guy accountable because he was outing officers, or it was conflated to get rid of him because he was a whistleblower. So after he left the New Orleans PD, that's when he started the detective agency that he's infamous for. The Garrison Commission alleged that Guy was the linchpin in the conspiracy that wound up in which Oswald killed John F. Kennedy.
Do you think it'll ever come out? Do you think they'll ever release the papers about JFK?
There's a lawsuit about it now. There's a lawsuit to release them, and then I heard I just saw a headline come across my phone the other day, but I haven't had a chance to look. But there's a senator calling for the full release. There's no reason. The only reason, and I heard somebody say this, and I agree, the only reason they are withholding those papers is not because it would solve the assassination. It would be deeply embarrassing to whatever agency, probably the CIA.
Yep. I think you could probably pay off your I think I heard on the radio that America had like some $1 trillion in debt or something. I reckon if you wrote a book and had those papers in it and said to the whole world, if we raise enough to pay our debt off, we're going to release the papers. I reckon the whole world will all chip in just to have a look at that, eh?
Right. Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. And
so are you more in the like you said, people get so wound up because they believe this happened. You're more flexible on the evidence-based stuff. So you might.
I'm pretty evidence-based. It's my personality. I'm very similar to my uncle in that I want evidence. I don't want innuendo. I don't want rumor. And because I'm coming at this later in life with having had no research other than what my folks had said about Guy, when I'm looking at each piece of evidence, I'm asking myself, so this guy said this, but can you prove it? Is there any corroboration?
Yep.
So I was getting really frustrated because there were a lot of really crazy rumors that were being reported. So I went to my brother-in-law, who's a homicide detective, and he was special victims as well. And I said, what do you do when there's a single witness reporting something really wild? And he said, you ignore it, because if you can't corroborate it, there's nothing you can do with it. So if following my brother-in-law's rule, 90% of what's out there about my uncle really can't be used.
Yeah.
Because it's all rumor.
Yeah. So it's not something that excuse me, it's not something that your family embarrassed to say that this is your uncle, or some people would not talk to you because he's your uncle. Like, is there that sort of?
That gets awkward sometimes because I'm not ashamed of him. Yep. He did some really bad things, but I'm not ashamed of him. I'm not ashamed because I didn't do it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Father.
Yep.
Yeah, and so if I talk openly about him, I get really weird sideways looks sometimes. Like, are you serious?
You really want to be connected to that?
He thought that it was a sneaky way to sneak communism in, and he was so rabidly anti-communist.
Yep.
That
Because
Anything that
you went through a couple of decades there in America that you were anti anything communism was like seemed to be a bit scary to the American political world and population. It seems to be. Again, I only see what I get on the news and what you're saying, but it does seem that communism was like the big threat to America's way of life.
It was. I liken it to, so the Red Scare, that's what we call it, is the Red Scare, the fear of anything communist. My uncle was a big part of the Red Scare. He was doing in Louisiana what Senator McCarthy was doing nationwide. It's really a lot like the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, where parents were just sure around every corner there was a Satanist going to snatch their kids.
Yep.
And it's very similar. Like, you have legitimate concerns about these kind of beliefs, but then you conflate them. It's everywhere, and you think they're around every corner, and your kids will never be safe. And it just turns into...
You get poor old us sitting in Australia going, fuck, I'm never going to America. I'll get snatched. Yeah, I can't let my daughter go down the street by herself. She'll be bloody kidnapped and sold somewhere, never to be seen again. Because like that's literally all we get out of America is we get the bad stuff, eh? And it it's a bit that and the OC, the Housewives. That's about all.
Oh, Lord. Oh my gosh, I feel like I get stupider if I watch shows like that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's what you see on TV is absolutely nothing like what you see every day, especially in the Midwest. We're in what's called the flyover states, and people call them the flyover states because there's nothing there and you just fly over them to get to somewhere cool.
Yep.
And
so no one's coming to visit Montana as a tourist. Like I wouldn't go to America and seek out Montana. Do you think to?
Oh no, you should. And the reason you should is that Montanans are intrigued by Australians. They will bend over backwards to help you out. And the thing that gets overlooked with Montana is we're incredibly hospitable. And we're the kind of place that if you're broke down on the side of the road, you've got 4 people stopping to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, see, if you watch the news in Australia, I think those 4 people are going to mug me, shoot me, tie me out and bury me in the desert and never be seen again. That's what the news has got us thinking.
So I had to laugh because like there was this day, this was back in the 90s. We had this neighbor. He lived about 8 miles north of us at the ranch. And he was in his 90s. He was the toughest old coot I've ever met in my entire life. And he had the hairiest. All I remember is his ears were so hairy he had to shave his ears. But there was a day that my husband, as a 16-year-old kid, we were not even dating at the time. We were just friends. He had come down to see us at the ranch, and he had a flat tire. And because of the condition of the side of the road, if you put the jack on he had an 88 or a Delta 88. It was a really old, we called them land yachts. They were so old and they were so big. It weighed too much. And if you put the jack underneath it would slide off the jack because the side of the road was so slippery. So this neighbor pulls up and he's on a horse because they were moving cows. We had just gone through his cow herd and then realized we had a flat tire. He pulled over and he stopped and he looked at the back of my husband's car and he says, "I'll lift the whole damn thing up with the tractor." And so he went home on the horse, grabbed his tractor, grabbed the bucket, lifted our whole vehicle up while we changed the tire and put it back down. And so that's the kind of folks I grew up with.
Yeah. So if you watch the stuff we see in Australia, he'd be coming along with shotgun saying, "Get off my property or I'll shoot you."
There's those people too. There are those people. I've known folks like that. Yeah, that is a thing, but it's not nearly as much or as endemic as what you have.
So if I just put on the Australian accent, say, "Come on, mate, come on, I'm Australian," they'll be right.
Yeah, just lay it on thick, dude, and they will bend over backwards to help you out.
Yeah, cool.
And Eastern Montana gets a bad rap sometimes as being backwards, but we're also very polite. Like Jim Carrey got stranded in Montana once, the actor, and folks bought him lunch at a diner and just sat and chatted with him until he could get his car fixed. It's way lower key than you would ever think.
Well, that's the America I wouldn't mind coming to see. Those country towns and the diners that we always see on the telly. That's where I'd like to see. Oh, I'd like to go and do Route 66 like my sister has done.
Well, if you do Route 66, you got to go to Williams, Arizona. I love Williams. I would live in Williams in a heartbeat. I love Williams. But
I was going to ask that. Is that where? So Williams, Arizona, is that where you guys, like you go on a holiday? Where would you go? Do you go to the coast? Do you go to, I don't know, like Yosemite National Park, or you know what I mean? Like when you take your family on a vacation, where's the place you guys like to go?
So when I lived in Western Montana, we would go to the coast because it was only 10 hours to the ocean.
Yep.
And then, but so this is how wide Montana is, and this is probably not so crazy to an Australian, but this is really crazy to like the English and the
Yeah.
Scottish. Montana is so wide, it is 10 hours from one border to the other border.
Yeah. Yep.
And so if you are in Western Montana, it's closer to go to the ocean than to go to Eastern Montana.
Yep. Yeah, look,
And
Australia's like that. New South Wales is like that. Where I live, to get to the next state west is about a 10-hour drive. And yeah, so it's about 10 hours across, across and up and down is about 10 hours
yeah,
across.
it's huge. It's absolutely enormous. And your guys' outback, I think, is more vast than our wildernesses too.
Yeah.
But so like in Eastern Montana, a close drive for us and realizing that close, this is again, probably not weird to an Australian, but it's weird to people from more densely populated states. There's a place in South Dakota called the Black Hills. It's a little mountain range that just rises out of nothing in the plains. And we love the Black Hills. I used to live down there. And it's about 3.5 hours from here, driving 70 miles an hour. And so we go to the Black Hills. We'll go down to Denver now and then. Denver is a really cool place. If you ever fly and you want to see the central US, you fly to Denver. And we go down and see family members down there. There's museums, there's cool, it's one of the biggest towns. It's like about 1 million people down there. And then if we were willing to drive about 2 days, I like to go to California, but we haven't gone in a really long time.
Yep. So the Denver's, that's the really high place in it. The city's quite
the Mile High City. Yep.
Yeah, it's like over 1,000 meters or something. Is it? Isn't it?
It's just over 5,280 feet up. I teach music, so I don't teach math. I don't convert things in my head. I have to count to 4. So
yep. What music do you just sing, or you play piano, or?
I sing and play piano, and I teach choir most of the time. I do play ukulele with the little guys. We're learning ukulele right now, but.
Yeah, I started learning guitar pretty late in life, and I love it. It's I did learn it when in my 20s. I learned classical guitar for a couple of years. Then family got in the way, and I just started learning probably 7 years ago. Yeah, so I enjoy. I'm not real good at it. I can't sing, but
as long as you enjoy it.
Yeah, that's it. I quite like making music, and that
guitar hurts. I don't play guitar because it hurts my hands.
Hurts your fingers.
Yeah, I like mandolin though. It's not even the fingertips. Like I don't have the hand strength. Like my wrists and back of my hands start to hurt. But I like mandolin and ukulele quite a bit.
Do your kids play music?
Yeah, my oldest plays tuba.
Yep.
And he was in violin for a long time, so he's familiar with strings. My youngest wants to be in trumpet, and he's playing piano with me right now.
Yep. Yeah, because I find a lot of people I know who can play piano, their kids haven't been taught the kids, but I guess. I don't know, kids like what they like. You can't force them to.
Oh, I was going to say the worst mistake you can make as a parent is making them do what you love. Make them do what they love.
So. Yeah, look, my daughter's just started playing guitar probably 2 years ago, and initially she had absolutely no interest in it whatsoever, went to lessons and hated it, so we stopped it, and she just picked it up one day and will probably play better than me one day, which is a good thing to see, I suppose.
Yeah, my husband's a really gifted guitar player. And he was a band teacher before he became a principal at a high school.
So you're both teachers? Yep. And is the high school in your local town? Obviously a big high school?
No, he commutes 40 miles away.
Oh, okay. What's that, 40 miles? It's about an hour driving?
It's 80 miles an hour, so it's about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, so like you said, Australia, we don't mind driving. Like where I used to live out Western New South Wales, I would drive an hour and a half to go out for dinner to a mate's place for a barbecue, then drive back home again, an hour and 20 minutes without thinking twice about it. And I remember running into an English guy here one day, and he was in a camper van up in the Blue Mountains here. And I was just chatting to him. He said, where do you recommend you go? I said, mate, you have to go to this place called Scott's Head. I said, it's just up the coast. And he said, where is it? I said, you just drive about 520 Ks, take you about 7 hours up the coast. And he said, hang on, mate. So I don't go that far. He said, that's like across 300 different countries. I said, you just go up there for the weekend, man. He goes, go that far for the weekend? I said, yeah. And he just couldn't fathom that I would get in my car and drive 500 kilometres for a weekend at the beach. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I find that people that live in bigger places don't mind doing that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And place in South Dakota I used to live was a major tourist hub, and I had folks from Europe come in a lot. And it was kind of the joke that one of the most fun things about hosting somebody from Europe was the vastly underestimating the size of the United States. They would get off the plane thinking that they could just drive down to the Grand Canyon, then pop up to Yosemite National Park, and then hop up to Glacier, and then go home. I mean, they just don't have a concept of how vast the
Yeah.
U.S. is.
Yep. Yeah, they don't, do they? So we'll give you your podcast a bit of a plug, Janet. So everyone who's listened to mine can tune into yours, and I'll put your podcast in the show notes as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So my podcast is Skeletons in the Closet, Family Secrets by Janet Bannister. It's about my uncle who was accused by the Garrison Commission of being involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And it's an exploration of two big questions, one of which is, why is the man that was portrayed in Oliver Stone's JFK so very different than the man that we knew? And in the movie Oliver Stone's JFK, he was portrayed by Ed Asner, and he was portrayed as a violent racist drunk. And that's not how we remember him at all. We remember him for being a man that took down gangsters in the 1930s. And then the second question that I explore is, how involved was he, if I can discern anything whatsoever from all of the evidence that's been contaminated through the years.
So everyone should go and have a listen to it. 'Cause I've listened to 2.5 episodes, and I actually quite like it. And I'm
glad.
Yeah, I'm actually quite enjoying hearing the I like political history in America more so than Australian history, which is a bit weird. It's a bit weird, but anyway, like I said, I spend a lot of time listening to Talkback Radio from America and England. Actually, I don't know where I got that from, but I just like to listen to what people are talking about, I suppose, over in other countries. And so, what advice would you give to the Australians out there, Janet, about America? Come to Montana.
I would say don't listen to a damn word you see on the media about what America's like. If you want to get kind of a better glimpse of the positive side of America, I think he's on Instagram and TikTok. His name is Josh from England, and he actually gives a much better portrayal of what we're like and the things that we love. There's a lot of things that America does very well, and it falls by the wayside in the international media. Sometimes you could argue that's because people love to hate on America. And sometimes
there's a lot of people in the world that do like to stack it on to America, to the USA for whatever reason.
Well, you feel better about yourself when it's like, well, at least I'm not like those damn Americans, you know?
Yes, it's like that, isn't
it? But there's lots to love about being here. Can
I just interrupt you for a second? I don't know if you listen to my episodes, but I need to go to the toilet, so I'm just going to press pause for 2 seconds. I'll be back.
No problem.
Sorry, I was absolutely dying. I shouldn't drink 2 or 3 cups of coffee.
No, it's all good. I know I'm getting close because I've been drinking. Because the day is over, I grabbed a glass of homebrew and
homebrew wine or beer.
I make mead and my husband makes beer.
Oh, okay, cool. I'd also, sorry, get a bit distracted from what you're talking about just before. How do you reckon it would have gone if Donald, like when Donald Trump had the assassination attempt and he survived it, which is good because no one wants to see anyone get assassinated. Jack Black was doing a concert in Australia and got absolutely, his partner or something said, I wish he had got shot, and basically got cancelled. How do you reckon the country would have reacted if he actually had have been shot?
Right.
Like if it had been, do you think it would have just caused a massive, I don't know, would have unrest, riots, and
no, I think it would have not caused necessarily unrest. We saw massive amounts of unrest during 2020. I think what you would have seen is something very much like what happened with Huey Long in episode 2. Huey Long was, and for those who haven't listened to my podcast, I'll just give a quick recap. Huey Long was a populist, and a populist, the way we define it is somebody, how do you define that? They appeal to identity politics, and they often inspire unreasonable amounts of support. And there's a better definition, but that's what I can come up with off the top of my head. Huey Long basically became a dictator in Louisiana and manipulated people into supporting him. My own great-grandmother was a huge supporter of Huey Long because he was the one that got us justice in the death that you mentioned earlier.
He sounded like he
And
was playing everyone off. He was like on everybody's side.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I
Depending on
personally
which
feel
room he was standing in, it depended on what his opinion was on something.
yeah.
By the sounds of
Well,
that
and
episode.
he Huey Long became whatever audience was listening wanted him to be. He was a chameleon. He operated Louisiana as a dictatorship for many years. Well, not many years, about 3 or 4 years before he was shot by actually a college classmate, possibly a classmate of my grandfather's. He was a doctor in Louisiana. And Huey Long was, and it was a little bit like the JFK assassination. There's question as to whether he was shot by Carl Weber, Dr. Carl Weber, or if he had been hit by ricocheted bullets by his own bodyguards who were firing at Weber. Um, I think you would see the country significantly fall apart in emotional ways, maybe some riots and whatnot. Um,
Because I think it's ridiculous to come out and say you wish someone had been shot when they got when you know what I mean. Like, I don't know if should have cancelled all his concerts because I quite like his music, but
I do. I like Tenacious D. I really do.
like
So,
he's actually a pretty. If you look at Jack Black doing, he's actually a pretty good muso. Like he's singing and that. Yeah, I like it.
he has a great high range. I love listening to him. Like his remake of "Oops, I Did It Again" is way better than Britney Spears.
Yeah, and I like his little take of Chris Isaac's song. Oh, what's that song he does? Oh, I can't remember the name, but anyway, but yes.
Oh, sorry, it was "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time." I always mix up those two songs, but it was "Hit Me, Baby."
Yeah,
he does. Better.
He does a Chris Isaac one, which sounds pretty good too. But so you don't really think that would have caused major like problems? Did many people was there many people going, oh, I wish he got shot, or I'm glad he didn't, like around just generally?
So here I was actually kind of proud of even the left for this, is that most of my friends on the left denounced the joke, and and they should.
Yep.
That's not I think the most Americans understand what the implications could have been had Trump been killed. Actually, for me, I think Trump would have been, if Trump had died, it could have elevated him to martyr status.
Yep.
Like Huey Long did. There's a lot of Huey Long supporters still to this day. And I'm glad he didn't die. I think the bigger question we really need to be asking ourselves about Trump is that why have we created a system where only terrible people rise to the top?
Yeah, and it's funny you've got you need money to get into politics. I'm not big. I'm not sure what you know about Australian politics, but we vote people in, and then the party with the most, like, I don't know, if you have like all the seats gets to choose who's in charge. I sort of like
Correct,
that.
yeah.
I sort of like that.
Parliamentarian, right? Or so, is that what you call it, right?
Parliamentarian, yeah. Is that what you said? Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm no expert in politics, but I sort of like that if the Labor Party or whatever party's in, and the guy running the show becomes a little bit nutty, like Joe Biden, I only see things on the news, but I think, man, that guy should be sitting on a veranda somewhere in a rocking chair enjoying his twilight years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If that sort of happens in Australia, the party can get together and say, you voted out. He still represents the local people that voted him in, but he no longer is in charge of the party. I sort of like the idea of being able to vote the guy in charge out if he starts becoming a bit of a knob and doing things that aren't, you're stuck with the bloke for 4 years over there, regardless of who you vote for. Good, right. Bad, indifferent, ugly.
It's tricky because the advantage of our system is, so like if you have, what often happens in our system is that midterm elections, so elections that happen in the middle of a term of a president, often go to the opposite party. Not always, but often. So there's a check and balance from the opposing party to keep the nuttier parts of the reigning president from going through.
Yep.
The thing that I'm most frustrated with Biden is that, again, I'm lean conservative, so I'm from the opposite party for the most. With the Democrats, anybody with eyes could tell that Biden was slowing down.
Yeah, I felt sorry for him. I actually, like it, when you saw him on the news, I got nervous watching him walk, and I'm thinking, "Fuck, is he going to fall over?" It
gave me so much. I couldn't watch his addresses. It gave me anxiety.
Yeah,
and
it's everybody who's not seen that. You know what I mean? Like it's like a comedy.
Saw it. That's what makes us so mad.
It's nobody going to tap him on the shoulder and say, "Man, see you later, bud. You can't do this anymore." Right. Like everyone in the world could see it except for him. Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely. And that's what made us so angry, is we were gaslit into believing, like, we were told that we were bad people if we opposed Biden. by the Democratic Party. And in so many words, it was a little more artful than that. But that's what made us so angry. And then up until the day he withdrew from the race, the mainstream media was like, yeah, Biden's the man, Biden can do it. And then the day he withdrew from the race, everybody was like, the same people were like, oh, thank God, that was going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
That's what made us so angry, because we were being gaslit as to his competency. And anybody with eyes, if Biden had been in my family, I would have been like, it is time to get an evaluation. It is time to get you to retire.
I actually felt sorry for him, more than anything. Like, I actually thought, man, you need to be sitting on the couch, sipping whatever you like to sip in the afternoon as the sun's going down. Doing whatever makes you happy, man, and enjoying your grandkids or something.
Right. And I don't agree with most of Biden's politics, but I can see him as a human being and saying, you need to retire. You need to take care of your medical needs, and you need to be with your family.
Yeah. And don't walk down those stairs on bloody Air Force
my
One
Lord.
on live television, man, because unfortunately everyone's just waiting for you to go bloody rolling down the stairs. Which is
right. And it was terrible. And that was actually a really sore spot for a lot of us who had been saying for years that Biden was slowing down and needed to retire.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. But so got anything else to add, Janet?
If I were to add anything, it would be, don't believe a damn word that you see on TV or hear on the radio about America. And we would love to have you up in Montana. And if you do decide you want to visit the center of the country, just give me a jingle.
Yeah, right. Well, if you send me an email with your address on it, I'll send you a hat so you can wear East Coast Averages.
Oh, that'd be great.
Australia.
Yeah. And then
I'll send a hat.
and I'll post, of course, once you get your episode up, send me the link and I'll post it on my feed.
No worries.
I think it's really fantastic. And thank you so much for the invite. I enjoy talking with folks from other countries quite a bit.
Yeah, so do I, actually. And like I said, I really like your accent. So yeah, cool.
Oh, well, thank you.
So give your show a plug again just before we go. What's it called again?
Okay. It's Skeletons in the Closet, Family Secrets by Janet Bannister. There are other podcasts with Skeletons in the Closet in the title. So if you add Family Secrets, it should pop right up to the top. And again, it's about my uncle and his possible role in the JFK assassination. And
I'll put it in the show notes, and really appreciate you chatting to us today, Janet. It's been really good.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed it so much.
No worries. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I can't believe that I've just spoken to someone so closely connected to the JFK assassination. Here I am, East Coast Averages, East Coast of Australia, doing a podcast, and I'll get to chat to Janet about her family, her upbringing, and her connection to the JFK assassination. And I really appreciate the insight Janet gave us on what it's like to teach in America. We see on the news, we hear about school shootings and things happening like that in the school system in the States. And I guess it's a hard subject to talk about, and I just want to thank Janet for allowing us into how it affects her on a personal level. And once again, thanks for chatting with me, Janet. I really appreciate it. If I ever head over to Montana, I will send you an email and you might be able to show me around that little town where the Knockaround Guys was filmed. Now, you did mention that movie. I watched it. It wasn't that bad a movie, man. You said it was pretty shit. It actually wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen. It was only an hour and a half, and it was a pretty easy watch. And I won't put a spoiler on it. There was a little bit of a twist in the end I didn't really see coming, which I thought made it a little bit better. And as usual, you can get me at info@eastcoastaverages.com. Website's eastcoastaverages.com. I'm on all the socials. If you don't mind, could you press like and subscribe? I really enjoy bringing this show. If you think you have a story that you want to tell, well, you know what? Don't think you got a story. Let me say you have got a story to tell. If you think you would like to come on my podcast and tell your story, then send me an email to the email I mentioned before, and we'll try and arrange something to come on the show. Hope you come back next week to listen to the next show, and I'll speak to you then.